Hello everybody, it's Claire here from Sewn by Claire, and today I've got another clothing alterations video for you. So it's kind of clothing alterations, kind of skill builder. It just depends on how you view these things, because I think they're all really useful to have in your arsenal of skills to use. This time we are going to take a pair of suit trousers, men's suit trousers, and in this case the gentleman wants the a little bit more room on the waist. So just ordinary, just suit trousers. Very kindly left the label on, they're all brand new. But what needs to happen is that we need to extend this back seam here. So before you agree to doing this alteration, you do need to take each pair of trousers on a case-by-case basis, because not everything has them. There was another pair that that he brought to me, and they got a bound edge, so the seam edges were together, and then there was like a Hong Kong finish on the back there. Well, there was just no extra fabric there to play with at all, so I knew that I couldn't do anything with those. But if we look at these, we can see that on this back, this is the back of the trousers, and inside the seam allowance here is really quite generous. So that gives us some room to move. The other thing that on these trousers as well, which you do find quite a lot in high quality trousers, is that the waistband has already been split before. So there's a seam going right through the middle. So we are able to take these trousers out, because tucked underneath here is the excess bit of waistband that we need, just in this section just here. If they'd not been cut in half there, you do then need to have enough fabric of either coordinating or what have you to make your extra insert for your waistband, because generally there may not be enough fabric. But as I say, on these ones then, yes, we've got a nice bit of spare fabric here, and if we leave just over a quarter of an inch on the seam allowance here and here, we can see we can probably give him a really good inch, maybe even an inch and a half extra at that point. So I thought you might like to know how I do these. It's always useful to have these skills if you've got a sewing machine, and in a local community sometimes people need these kind of alterations doing. And I just thought that you might like to know how to do it. So I'll get set up and we'll have a go and see what we can do. So as I say, we've already determined on these trousers that it's got a split back waistband and that there is enough seam allowance here to make this alteration worthwhile. So the first thing you're going to have to do is grab your seam ripper or your quick unpick, and we're going to start by very carefully undoing the stitching that's holding the waistband down. So let's start with that. Okay, so here's my quick unpick, and let's see what we can do. So first of all, we've got some stitches holding down the waistband at the back, so we're going to undo those, and we're just going to try and remember as well how these have been put together so that we can do this again. That stitch I would do by hand. When we've finished, just try and get all of our threads out. Talk amongst yourselves whilst I'm just concentrating. And again on the edge of this pocket here. So just making sure that the point of your quick unpick hasn't picked up anything else that it shouldn't have done. The last thing we want to do on this brand new pair of trousers is go in to damage them. And again here. Okay, so we can start and see inside now the back. We can take out these tacking stitches on the end here as well, just to make it a little easier for us. Gives a little bit of moving room to manoeuvre. Just try and tidy this up as you go along, because obviously it can just be a bit of a pain when you have to go back when you think you've all finished. Okay, so this has exposed the inside of the waistband for us. So there's our waistband from the outside, and then we're just turning it over in our hands, and now we've just exposed this in the inside. So I'm just going to start here and just start undoing these stitches here, just holding the waistband together, because obviously we need that split to let it out a little bit more. Again, just take your time
Just be careful where your point is as well on your quick unpick, so you're not going to go through anything that you don't want. Tend to use my finger at the back. I can replace my skin, but I can't replace the trousers. This is my thought process. Even if it's just one stitch at a time, just take your time. Excuse the neighbour's dogs barking. So we're just going to carry on down here, just taking out these stitches here as well. That's where the cover stitching has gone at the back. This is all folding out quite nicely now, as you can see. It's just and now we're going to go down the back of the waistband. If you have got a cover stitch type thread that's sort of loopy, sometimes you can just start pulling it. If you pull the trousers through to the middle, sometimes it's actually quite quick to undo. You can just pull on one thread and it just seems to undo, just like this one is doing here, look. So I'm just pulling on this thread and it's just unpicking for me, and it's just taking out all of that risk. Well, there's 2 layers of stitching, that's why. So there's 2 layers of stitching on this back seam as well, so we can remember that for when we're reconstructing. We want to go down the back here. If I just turn these trousers so that you've got the legs inside each other, just do that off camera because I just need a bit more room. And that sometimes gives us a bit more room to be able to see. So we can see that this is the back. So here's the seam between the legs where the bottom of the fly is there and caught in. And we can see along here where the thread, this is for the back seam between the at the very centre back of the trousers, where this starts to veer out. Now, I know that this guy wants more room at the waist, but he doesn't necessarily want more room over the bottom, if you like. So I'm going to choose a point with a pin that I'm going to go to, which will probably be about here. And that's because that's where where it starts to veer off most, and then I'll probably follow that line up and then just bring it up here with my new stitching. So that's gone down to there far enough, so I'll snip that thread off, and then let's just see if we can get this one to unravel a bit more. It's not wanting to take that thread off. I'm just hoping to find that end again and just start again, because if I've not got to put my quick unpick near this seam, then that's for the better, because that's less for me, less risk of me puncturing the fabric. I don't think I'm going to be lucky enough with that. Oh, there we go, it started off again a little bit. It seems to just keep faltering every now and again. The previous line of stitching, that's got that one out, so maybe it was getting caught up on that. As I say, oh, there we go. I'm going to take it down towards this area here and snip that off. We will have to do a few stitches because, as you can see how easily that's all unravelled, it will continue to unravel, and obviously we don't want this gentleman to have a hole in the back of his trousers. So as you can see, we've now got the 2 halves of the trouser at the waistband completely split. The first thing that I like to try and do before we put these back together again, apart from just neating up so that we've not got bits of thread where we don't want it, because it does get stuck into your stitching when you try to put these back together again. So you can just fold that bit out, and that's going to give us the centre back of the waistband that we wanted. They just folded it out of the way whilst it was not being used. So I have put the trouser legs inside each other just so that I can then work with the centre seam. And what I want to do now is match up those two edges there. So that there, it's a bit like matching up your points or your quilting, isn't it? Getting your points to match. Let's get a pin and just pop that in there to hold that together for me. And then we've got the back seam here. So as I say, we're going to try not to add too much to the actual back fullness on the trousers. We don't want them to be too baggy because we want like some tight fitting, but we want to make sure that we've added this extra room if we can do. So I've straightened out the waistband top bits. This is the inside of the waistband here. We're just matching those together. That's just coming undone there, so we just need to be aware of that. So let's match up this end point here. I'll fold these bits out. I do make them to be quite complicated, these waistbands on these men's trousers. Go through all the layers to make sure they're going to sit nicely whilst we sew. And again here we want those bits there to match together. So it does help your construction knowledge of when you're garment sewing does help with doing these kind of alterations, because you kind of know your way around the fabric pieces. So we've got those two together there, we've got that together there, that's all going to match up nicely, and then we've got our seam here. So really all I'm going to do now is I'm probably going to sew from the other side, I think, do that way and sew from the centre of these trousers here. Turn my pin round, can't I, just to make sure that we're okay. Oh no, first thing I want to do is, see I've just done, hold on a second. What I want to do first is actually get rid of this line here with the stitches, and the best way that I've found to do that is to put a little bit of water on it, because if you can see there's little pinprick holes in that seam, and what we want to do is just close those fibres up together. You can rub your nails across them and that does start to help. But also I have found that just by spraying a little bit of water along here and then using a press cloth, always use a press cloth on these kind of suit trousers because they will go shiny if you're not careful, is then and just press it flat, just like that, and it'll just get rid of hopefully that creased in, that sewn in crease that's just there at the moment on both sides. So I'll just go and do that on my ironing board and I'll come back to you. So I've just put my tailor's hand down on my work surface, on my ironing board, because I want to just be able to put these trousers across, and that gives me a nice area to work with. I'm then just going to use the spray button on my iron and just smooth that water into that fabric and just let that soak in. Let's do the same on the other side, because somehow the water just seems to just relax the fibres in the trousers. Just hide that. On the belt it's not too bad because generally guys wear belts, don't they, with their trousers, so we're just making sure that's just nice and wet. Sometimes you put them over top of each other and it helps get the water in underneath. All tricks you kind of learn. And then if I plug my iron in, get that heated up, I'm going to put this across here like this, and the idea is just to get rid of this permanent crease that is in there from the previous stitching line, and that should hopefully help us get a nice finish on the back of these trousers. I'm always going to use a press cloth, in this case always got my trusty silk organza here, just picked a metre or two up from the internet and then just edged it on my serger, but it's perfect. It takes all that heat out of the takes the harshness out of the heat. That's what I want to say. Make sure we don't iron in any new creases. And can we see that that's gone really nice now, just nice and flat. And it's much easier to do this before you sew them back together again. So although I had started to pin, I knew that it was still worthwhile to take those pins out and just iron this out first.
So you can just really get into that area. Okay, so there we've got our two sides now nice and flat, so it's back over now to start pinning again. Okay, so we're back with the trousers back on my work surface again. The legs are still inside each other, so that's the way that I've got it folded, so this is lying nice and flat together. I also want to know, I want to start here and then sew down to the end of the waistband. So I'm just going to put my pins in from this side here, and we know that those threads, the double stitching went down as far as here, so I'm going to start here with my reinforcing, and we know we wanted to go to about here and straight up, but then just out a little bit more at the waistband, so a little bit of shaping. Let's get some pins. Oh, got a thread on there. So just putting the edges of the trousers back together again. As we had before. When we get halfway up here, then I start to look at the waistband, because that's going to be our next match point. So again, where I was before, I'm just looking at putting the two edges of the waistband together. There's the edges of the stitched fabric, and now I just want to make sure that they're as close as can be before putting a pin right on that very join. Hold those together. And then we're going to unravel back up to here again and try and get these as perfect as we can. So we go to the very end of the waistband to match those edges up. Make sure these bits that have all got to be folded in together are folded down. And then we go back to here. Put another pin in just here to hold that together. So yep, happy with that. So now it's all a case of is choosing a matching thread, and I've got this dark grey, browny grey that I'm going to use on here. I think it'll be okay. And that's quite dark there. Let me see if I've got a darker one actually, because I can match it to the original if we can. So with our trousers, just going to load them into our machine, and this pin here at the bottom reminds me that I need to sew at the back there. So I'm just lining up my thread so that it's going to be right on top of those existing stitches. A couple of stitches forward and back. I have got this on a 2.2 stitch length. I'm going to put my needle down into my work as well. Now we've got started, we can just adjust the fabric. Take your time, no point in rushing. There's so little stitching to do on this repair actually that you don't need to rush it. So now I'm just going to start and veer off the line that was stitched before. Going straight up. Just keep adjusting your fabric as you need and your garment so it's straight in front of where you're stitching. As you can see, I'm just starting to reduce the gap here at the top because it's the waist where he actually wants the more room. The waistband, we just go straight along here. Just make sure everything's lying straight and flat underneath your garment. And yes, I could have changed the thread to white at this point, but the original hadn't, so I'm not going to do that. Reverse sew. Okay, needle up, let's cut our threads and have a look and see what we've done. And we can see that's the difference, that's where we've added the extra. So if I get my seam gauge, if I can find it. Oh, maybe I should have stayed, that'll do.
And what we can see here is that if we go just here, the difference between there and there, we've added nearly 2 inches of space, look, just on 1 3/4 inches. Matching pretty good at the back of the waistband there, and again at the top, that's fine. Just making sure this is all smooth, we can tidy up those stitches at the bottom there, but that's looking all good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just go back, now there's no pins in, and I'm just going to do the second row of stitching, because if you remember there were 2 rows of stitching on the original, so I'm going to start again down here and go back up again and do that second row of stitches. Just that reinforcing that area, because we know that that seam gets quite a lot of pressure on it. Let's cut off the starting thread, shall we first, so I don't get confused. Oh, got a pin stuck on my snips. I think it's time for a very good clean up in my and tidy up in my sewing room. It does tend to get a little bit cluttered. When I get to like a 6-inch working space, then I know it's time for a tidy up again. Okay, so make sure that they're lying really flat, and we need to get these lined up really perfectly. So I'm lining the centre of the stitching line right in between those two, the feet on my presser foot, and just the fabric. To make sure it just all stays flat. And now on the waistband, I'll just reinforce that a little bit there. Threads. There we go. So, what we've got to do now is take this over to the ironing board. Oops, sorry, flopping it around in front of your face. Take this over to the ironing board. We're going to press this flat, again using the tailor's hand that we've just used, so that makes that seam nice and flat again. And then again with the waistband, we're going to press that side, those 2 sides apart, all the way through this waistband fabric here, and then we'll fold it over, and then we'll put in a few little hand stitches underneath here just to hold that waistband down, and we'll be done. So I'll show you when I've finished.
Okay, so I've just pressed the trousers. We can see a little bit of the original seam, but that should start to fade as these get worn, and certainly shouldn't be enough. It's actually better in person than it is there. I think there's still a little bit of wetness just where those stitches have been, but it's definitely getting better. So all that needs to happen now is on the inside of the waistband, I'm just going to fold these little bits up so we hide those in. So we're just going to miter those edges, and then I'll just tack those down to the seam allowance. So I'm just turning up to the inside of those rough bits there. I'm just turning them back on themselves inside to make like a little point, and it'll just take those out the way so they're not going to fray or look unsightly. So that will go like that. And then I'm just going to put a few stitches in just to attach this white bit of the waistband down to this seam just here, and that will then just hold that down. But then, as we can see, as I said before, we've actually added, oops, threads, just under 2 inches to these trousers. So actually, that's quite a big increase for most people, and could be the difference between throwing the trousers away or actually getting some more wear out of them. So Quite pleased with that one. I think that's done okay. Hopefully this has been useful to you. If you do like my clothing alteration videos, then please consider subscribing to my channel. I also do dolls clothes and dressmaking, quilting, and also cross stitch. So hopefully there's a bit of something for everybody. If you're curious, then have a bit of a browse around and see what you can find. But have a great day, everybody. I hope you give this a try as well and just see how you get on. Let me know in the comments if this is going to be useful to you or not, and hopefully it will. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.